Welcome, welcome, everybody.
I'm going to tell a quick chord story. So about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, like this was like during pandemic, we did these kind of like quick faculty get to make up lectures to give for resident conference because of we didn't have in-person conference for a while. And so I was super into the Great British Bake Off, and I was watching it and I was like, wow, the feedback they give is so perfect, and like extremely good from a medical education standpoint. It's like direct observation. It's very focused on the outcome of the encounter, not like the person. There's no like personal attacks in it. It's well delivered, it's thoughtful, but it's constructive. I was like, this is like an amazing meta topic. So I threw it into Chord and they gave me like a 10-minute lecture. And I was very happy to have that. But I had done a few presentations at Chord prior, and I figured I was safe, that it would be a small room somewhere with 10 people watching. And it turns out I was in the first group of lectures that went after the Welcome to Chord talk at 9 a.m. on the first day on Sunday morning. And so I was in the main conference room as like the third person that talked for all of Chord in front of like 250 people. And I was like, oh, now everyone's going to know me as like the Great British Bake Off guy. But it went well.
I
It
was
was really
actually going
fun.
to say, I'm like, I remember that talk and it was extremely clever. Like, I was kind of jealous. I'm like, this is the perfect analogy, like
Yeah.
real world comparison.
Yeah.
And that's actually brilliant. We do like a faculty development thing once a year, and I scour the internet for like videos of good feedback. But that is so smart. I'm putting that in my back pocket. I love
Yeah.
that.
Happy to come reprise my talk. Um, all right. Well, I think I can start. I'll introduce Dr. Estes and have everyone else, and then maybe you introduce the people that are going to be chatting with you. Um, so, uh, Dr. Estes and I go back way back. She was my senior resident and chief at the Stanford Kaiser Emergency Residency Program, and my med ed fellow, and has always been a good friend. One of my driving forces into joining medical education, because she makes it look so easy and graceful. And she's got such a good attitude about everything. So very happy that she offered to give this chat on how to optimize your chance of getting a successful core didactic submission. And I'm very excited to hear what you all have to say.
No, thank you so much for giving us the time and the platform to be able to chat about this. Hi, everybody. My name is Molly Estes. I'm the current chair for the Academic Assembly Planning Committee, joined by a couple of really fantastic friends and experts in this topic of how do you submit a didactic proposal for Core Academic Assembly, or really a didactic proposal in general. We're going to have a nice conversation back and forth about some of the things to consider, some of the tips and tricks that we have all learned along the way, and hopefully give you all some very, very practical advice. So I'm joined by Dr. Andy Little. Andy, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hey, I'm Andy Little. I'm the current program director at Advent Health, Orlando, Florida. Am a past uh, academic assembly chair and worked my way through the what is now called the Med TED track. So excited to be here, Molly.
You always freak people out though when you say the current program director. They're
Yes,
like,
sorry.
yeah, what's coming down the road?
I'm the program director. There's no plan. There's no succession plan. This was brought up to mind that I do use the word current a lot when I talk about people's jobs, and I am the program director. There's no plan to leave. So
I love it.
yeah.
As well as Dr. Brian Barbas. Brian, introduce yourself.
Hi, Brian Barbas. I'm uh, recovered clerkship director, interest group advisor, PEC chair, core faculty, many different hats and titles at Loyola, as you can see by my lovely ambulance bay background today. Um, I can't remember all the other things, but Molly pulled me in because I've done quite a few presentations now at Court over the past few years. Um, and I think I'm the ASCM committee vice chair. So yeah.
Yes, yes, you are. There's no thinking about it. Yes, indeed, you are.
Titles, lots of titles. Can't keep track.
Yeah.
All right. So in case you haven't heard, Cord Academic Assembly 2026 is going to be this next year in Orlando, Florida. Dates, I have to always double check myself because I'm so afraid of getting them wrong. March 25th through 29th. The 25th is going to be the pre-day. And if you are well attuned to social media and your email, then you will have heard by now that our official didactic proposal period opened as of yesterday. So every single year, the planning committee gets numerous questions from a lot of our Cord membership about what goes into submitting a good didactic proposal for academic assembly. What are some of the things that we consider? What are some of the niches that we're looking to fill? How do I, as an individual, go about making my proposal as compelling and competitive as it can possibly be? Just to give everybody a little bit of a frame of reference, last year we received the most didactic proposals that we have ever received before, somewhere around 700, to fill a agenda schedule with a number that is significantly lower than that. So as you can imagine, it is a very competitive process to get a proposal, a didactic proposal accepted by the planning committee, not because we are mean-spirited ogres in the background, only choosing our favorite people, but because we have so much interest from our membership in being able to share their expertise and their knowledge and their passions with the rest of our community. We really are in an incredibly difficult but incredibly exciting position to be in, to be able to see all of your ideas. So therefore, the idea for this Cord Connect session, how to submit a competitive didactic proposal for Cord Academic Assembly, was born. So to get the conversation started, all three of us have written proposals before. All three of us have had proposals accepted for academic assembly before. All three of us have had many proposals denied for academic assembly before. So let's start the conversation very, very basic. How do you decide what topic you're going to write on for your didactic proposal? What are some of the topics that you all have considered in the past? How do you go about beginning to tease through that thought process?
Brian, you want to go first?
Sure. So I'd say the big things that I focus on are what are the things that I've been doing over the past year, things that have been interesting me, things that I talked about in the hallway at Cord last year.
Mm-hmm.
And, those are often the topics that I think of. William actually brought up earlier his inspiration of watching the Great British Bake Off and feedback. And it's looking at the things that you come across. And if you find it interesting, there's usually going to be an audience there at Cord that's also going to find it interesting. We're a bunch of academic nerds.
Yeah, I'm going to second Brian's thought that if you can keep it job adjacent, so if it's something you're currently doing, that will come across in your proposal. Like, again, as Molly mentioned, in her current role and in her previous role for the CDEM track and Mind for Med said, you can read a proposal and realize this is somebody who does this, is passionate about it. Very, very different than this is someone who just put in 30 proposals. And so if you can make it job adjacent and passion adjacent, that's going to go along pretty well. And the benefit of Cord being what it is that the goal is to offer as diverse offering as possible. And so if you make it personal, you can make it personal and still broadcast that out to a group and get a room full of people that want to hear about it. And so I'm going to second what Brian said, that it's got to be something that you're passionate about, and job adjacent helps.
I do love those hallway conversations every year at Cord, right? And sometimes I'll actually take notes to myself when I'm having those conversations. So, oh man, I really wish that I would have heard something about this. Or, oh, I wish that we could have had a deeper dive in this particular topic. Have you heard XYZ coming down the pipeline? Those are all topics that are wonderful to consider for a didactic proposal. I'll also say that the bread and butter topics are really good ones too. Every single year we need our updates about what are the latest and greatest changes for student advising, for the resident interview season, for application review, for RRC changes that are coming down the pipeline. a lot of what we do is very cyclical within the world of medical education. And so from the planning committee, we always try to balance the annual updates that everyone has to have with the latest and greatest cutting edge medical education that we are also passionate about. So say I have an idea for a proposal, but I honestly don't really know if it's just something that's interesting to me or if other people are going to find it interesting as well. Who are some of the people that you have sought out over the years in order to bounce an idea off of, help you flesh out a proposal, really seek some mentorship from in this entire submission process? Andy, you go first this time.
Yeah, I think for me, that's a great question, Molly, and it's two parts. So I remember the first time I had one accepted. It was successful because I reached out to the people that presented in that track the year before. And so literally like when I sat out in 2017 to give a lecture at Court in 2018 in San Antonio, I looked and said, all right, I'm going to go for the med tech, the segment. So I went and looked and I was like, all right, Teresa Chan, it has a ton of proposals there. So I'm going to send my proposal to Teresa Chan. And luckily I knew Teresa Chan, but I said, hey, Teresa, can you just take a look at this? This is something that I think is cool. Is it something you think I could present on it? She gave me a bunch of edits, said, yes, this is good. No, like she basically edited it like it was a paper. So when I submitted it, it was my idea, but it was under the guise of someone who'd been successful in the past. And I think that's where if I was new this year and you go to say, I look at the stuff you want to present on and say, I want to do something within CDEM. I want to do something within clerkship. So I'm going to go look at everybody who presented at clerkship stuff last year and look them up through the listserv. And I know that sounds scary to reach out to somebody you don't know, but if you didn't know this already, EM docs are nicer than everybody else. If you didn't know this even more, academic emergency physicians are nicer than the average EM doc. And if you send me or Molly or Brian or any other people that presented last year at court an email and say, hey, I looked at your stuff, I saw you presented a bunch in this track, can I send you an idea for a proposal? The answer is probably going to be yes. And so find the people who have been successful before, and just workshop your ideas. And it was nice because I submitted 3 things that year. Teresa gave me feedback on all 3 of them. Only one of them got accepted, but then I was able to take that one success to then when I attended, I was really focused on the other people who presented, and not everybody was willing to share, but some were like, hey, can you show me your submission? Like what worked, what didn't work? And then I think that's just dovetailed it to where now submissions get easier because once you learn how to write a submission in the way at which Cord wants it to look like, you can become successful.
So I'm of this belief. So there's this African proverb that Alium brought into my life, which is if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I am a firm believer in finding your group and like if workshopping something with your like group of friends. I think all but no, every one of my presentations at Cord has been with a group of people and been able to, again, bounce those ideas off of it, workshop through it together. So it's not just me working this through in a silo, opening up a Google Doc and workshopping it together and then talking it through at least once via Zoom. I find that that's always been the most helpful. I'm not siloed in my ideas. I'm able to bounce ideas off for different presentations, but also to talk through the actual proposal. So I think half of my presentation, or almost all of my presentations have been with the same like rotation of 3 or 4 people, or one of the like a panel with a committee that I'm on with, a particular direction.
Andy, you were much smarter than I was when I first started trying to write didactic proposals for anything. I just kind of did it and submitted it, and then really didn't have very much of an idea why things got bounced back to me as rejections. Not that I was under like any sort of hubris that they should have been accepted, but it's true that when things do get denied or declined, we don't really do it in a way that provides any sort of feedback. So I remember, I think for me, it was 2019, reaching out to my vice chair of education and being like, hey, I wasn't sure about this idea. Do you think this is a good idea? And sent him the proposal. He's like, well, the idea is great, but what are you doing in your writing of your description?
Yeah.
Like, none of this makes any sense. I'm like, oh, well, that's a different problem that apparently I had that I had no idea that I had. So the kind of next question beyond just like who do you reach out to for mentorship, which is going to be your committee of people, people who have done it more times than you, people who have presented in the area that you've presented in before, just to get an idea about how you should formulate your proposal. But when it comes right down to it, where most of us start is in the actual nitty-gritty writing details. So huge plug. We're going to go back to like grade school lessons here. Huge plug for reading the directions. You all get to meet my cat who has decided to make an appearance in the background. My apologies about that. We have a lot of very extensive directions and instructions and explanations on the CORD website and as part of our submission portal. In fact, Danielle, if you wouldn't mind throwing a link into the chat for everybody who's on the call right now for the didactic submission portal, you can even begin to take a look at it right now, which is really, really exciting. Thank you. I appreciate you. And where most people tend to get into like a little bit of trouble is that you just do it and write it without actually reading the directions first. I promise you that if you start with the directions, you're going to automatically have a leg up on a lot of other people. So you've read the directions, you kind of know what you're shooting for, you kind of have an idea of what type of submission you're writing for, whether you want this to be a lightning talk or a track talk or a panel discussion or a workshop. And then you actually have to put words on a page. So how do you go about structuring good, compelling lecture descriptions and objectives? These are like very, very granular skills that sometimes we get training on and sometimes don't. So Brian, how do you wordsmith?
So I always start with my goals and then work backwards. What am I hoping that the audience is going to take from it? And then trying to think about writing these in those education-based terms, like not just like this is the data I want to take, but what is the actionable goal that I'm helping that they can take from it, and then working backwards to figuring out how to sell it and what's the hook. There's going to be 20 proposals on how to give feedback, but what's your hook? What's the thing that's going to get Molly as she's going through all these proposals in the fall, or whoever is the individual track, interested in that one? So it's kind of that, what are my goals? What's my hook? Now let me build it and write it.
Go for it, Molly.
Oh, I was going to say, it's kind of like some of the stuff that Brian and I were on a separate call earlier this morning that we were talking about. In order to get people to listen, you have to let them know why it is relevant to them. And so, yes, why is that? What is that hook and why is it so important? Andy.
Yeah, I was going to say, when I think about writing these, I think one, like Molly said, follow the instructions. Two, fill it out. I think in the year I was a junior, and then the actual chair of academic assembly, I was amazed at the number of submissions that were just not completely filled out. Like we're talking 10 to 15% of submissions just weren't complete. And some of those actually had really good things, but like didn't finish. So on top of read the instructions, please complete the form out to it till it's done completely. But I like to view it as is that this is something that I'm going to present at CORD that I would like to publish one day. And this was the feedback I got from Teresa Chan early on and got reinforced the second year I submitted when nothing got accepted. The second year I did it. And it was when I sent those to people to review, it was, well, these objectives weren't written with the end in mind. And so to me, the end is, I want to say I'm a content expert on X, and I want to present it in front of people at CORD. And then what if I wanted to turn this into a publication? What would that need to look like? And so when I write my objectives and my descriptors for my sessions, it's the kind of like writing an abstract to a journal. Is that if this was to be a 250 word explanation of why my project is awesome, what would I write? And so that's kind of the way I view writing didactic submissions for CORD is that I only get so many words to explain to them, i.e. the reader or the person choosing for that, why they want my session. And so just like I would for a publication, it needs to be with the end in mind. And so I really focus on, this is probably where you should spend the most of your time is in the description, knowing that the objectives are kind of generic, but the description is where you should spend the bulk of your time.
A huge plug for Googling that go-to list of action verbs that we all use in our proposal objectives and that you use for
Yeah.
objective writing in general. Sometimes when I've been looking at that list of action verbs, it's actually spawned a few different ideas of ways to phrase things and be like, oh yeah, well, that's actually what I'm trying to say, but just in
Yeah.
a much more concise, more educated sounding format.
Yeah. And I think maybe the second tip I would give is make sure your submission isn't just about your program. And this is something that I've seen recurrently when I've looked at submissions is that the submissions that are successful focus on maybe something you did at your program that expounds outside of the program, like, hey, this is best practices we found at Loma Linda, or we found at Advent Health, or we found at Northwestern, that I want to present to everybody. But if you just focus on both the description and the deliverable is all about your institution, that probably won't get picked. Because again, the goal is to find somebody who can speak to a broader audience with your experience.
Now, we've all mentioned a couple of times about how much we love a group project, right? Like a lot of what we do in medical education, a lot of what we do in emergency medicine medical education is very group focused. We have friends, we have colleagues, like we want to collaborate with these people that we enjoy hanging out with, and we love doing didactic proposals together. In fact, I think it's a less and less frequently occurring thing of where you will see a didactic at Cord Academic Assembly that doesn't have at least a couple speakers involved. We want to have a broad representation from our entire community. But we all are scarred from high school group projects, and our efforts to try to do anything with a group is like herding cats. So if you are working with a group, how do you navigate that? Who does the writing of the proposal? Is it broken up? Does one person take lead? How do you make sure, especially with our new submission portal, that everybody fills out their disclosure form, because otherwise your proposal will be considered incomplete? What do you do? How do you handle it?
So I imagine everybody who's on this call is gonna watch this. You've had to do this as an adult, say for a paper. And so I do it the same as when I do a writer's workshop. It's the, hey, can we all get on a call and work our way through this? And we either all do it together, which is we're all going to dedicate an hour and sit down and do this together, or it's a very specific delineation of roles. And so for me, just like authorship for a journal, it's, whose name gets to go first and whose name gets to be at the top of the project. And it's if you're the first or the last person, you're committed to be in charge of wrangling people and being kind of the creative minds of it all. Like you're going to be the ones that set the deadlines. You're going to be the ones that make the Google sheet or the Google presentation slides for people to throw their stuff in. And then if you're in the middle, you've got to be willing to do the work for your specific section. But I'm really big on group projects only work with really, really precise planning, or if you can't get your group together, you all work on it together. And I've had to do both versions in Cord presentations. I don't know which one's better. I actually kind of like the, hey, can we all hop on for an hour and knock this out? Because I think it's easier, but that doesn't work for everybody I've done group projects with. But if I was to give you my best tip would be just find an hour for everybody to hop on, build your submission together, submit it together, get your disclosures done together, be done. Or someone's got to be very, very strict, knowing that now if it's incomplete, it doesn't even get submitted. So, Brian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, and I was going to say, Brian, you really do have a successful core group of people who manage to put together extremely compelling proposals every single year. What's your magic?
So the scarring from high school that Molly was referring to, I feel comes from the fact you didn't get to pick your group, right? Like you have no control who you were going to be assigned to. And or maybe you were choosing your friend who may not have been the most dedicated, but it was going to be fun. But when you get to this stage, you have a bunch of people that you can, over the years, figure out who you work well with, who's going to mesh with your styles. It was kind of convenient. Like the group that Molly's talking about that I frequently work with, we met through the Academic Life and Emergency Medicine Faculty Incubator. We connected as viewpoints and styles through that. So we already knew that we had some similar approaches. So then when it came to writing things, we knew each other's strengths and weaknesses, and over the years we've now been able to adjust on it. And even within it's the same 4 or 5 of us that we keep working with. We've actually done both approaches that Andy has said. We have, for certain ones, one of us has taken the lead, and then the others have edited the proposal. And for others, we have hopped on a call and did the proposal together at once, and then hopped on another call in the fall after we were accepted and being like, okay, what are the next steps for it? And it's just that figuring out what's needed. And then the same thing with, having a good group of people that are able to support you. So like last summer when applications were due, I had a horrific family tragedy going on and could not think and focus on this. And but we had already like started our proposal and I knew that things would be stabilized before next chord. I just could not focus on the proposal at the time. So one of the group members said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of like what you normally would do for us. Just take a look over it before we submit." And it was that nice like ebb and flow of it. And then when it came back before the presentation, we found a different balance on prepping. But I think again, that's where having your group and at this point in my chord career, multiple groups. Like I have certain groups for these presentations and other groups of friends for these presentations.
I love that. Andy, I'm going to put you on the hot seat for the next series of questions, okay? Because this is now specifically from your perspective as a former medtech junior chair, senior chair, uh, junior chair of academic assembly, and a recovering chair of academic.
Recovering chair is a good word.
I was going to say that's a lot of years, man. That's a lot of chair versions. I'm right in there. So let me ask you this. What do you specifically look for in a proposal? Every single content area of expertise gets anywhere from several dozen to a couple hundred proposals every single year. What are you initially screening for when you do your proposal review, and what catches your eye?
Yeah, that's a great question, Molly. For me, it's really 2 points. So one is this a topic or is this a presentation that if I was to get a non-core faculty member from my program to listen to, that would inspire them to be a better teacher? And that's maybe too big for some people to think about. But when I look at stuff, it's can I get that honorary faculty member who works shifts with my residents but doesn't like to do feedback and doesn't want to come on Thursdays? If they were to come to your talk, would you change their mind? So that's the big one for me. And then I think the second one is that, and it's under the same guise, could I get my core faculty member who maybe is having a struggling year? Would they come to your talk and be reinvigorated to do the work? And because to me, that's really the purpose of chord. The purpose of chord is for everybody, people to present their stuff, for all of us to get Scarlet activity. But if we're not inspiring people to educate, what are we really going to this conference for? And so I really focus on the fact that like these sessions are supposed to be inspiring for those we would want to become educators, knowing that a large portion of the people who attend chord are new faculty or are seasoned faculty looking for that spark for the next year. And so those are really the two audiences I try to go after, and when I'm picking things. So
now we do have a very finite amount of time for our programming, and we will never be able to cover the exhaustive list of medical education, of good, solid, invigorating medical education topics that are out there. How do you go into a proposal selection process for planning for like a balanced curriculum for your content area of expertise, or even for all of academic assembly in general? Do you have like a list already in mind? Do you let the proposals guide you? The vibes on the Excel sheet?
So I don't want to like blow up Molly's, because Molly has to do this in a couple months. So I know this is Molly asking a question for herself and everybody else. But the advice I got was to don't go into chord with a preset. This is what we have to cover, because the membership knows what the membership wants, and so the submissions will mirror, for the most part, what the membership needs. And so for me, it's let's talk about MedTed. When I did MedTed, it was really straightforward of, can I get a varied amount of people? Because there are a lot of cool people doing the work. And so trying to avoid, getting all of my talks from the same 7 programs, knowing that we're 270 plus programs strong. And then when I think about the number of programs, I also wanted to make sure that I represented varied types of programs, because I think some of our best presentations have come out of the small community programs where they have problems that larger, well-funded state or university programs don't. And then I think the third probably way to, how do I get through everything is making sure that all the content that we come together will kind of flow well. And that's probably the hardest part when you build a track from a chair perspective. And then working with track chairs defined is like you can have 55 really good proposals and have your 24 hours planned and then have it just not flow well. And so I think it's worth like looking at making sure that the topics that are being picked mirror each other enough, or at least cross paths enough to where, again, someone could walk into a room and get lost there and then be okay that they never left. And so again, we talked about like the end is important. I really focus on the end user. Of the end user is that one faculty member who's going to go into a room and get inspired to be a better educator. And so it's all about them. They don't want to hear from the same people all day. They don't want to hear the same kind of formats. They want a variety, and then they want it to flow well. So
let me follow up by asking this question. My original question that I had planned, you already kind of answered, which is,
okay.
How do you choose content
Mhm.
to speak to the wide variety of educators that we have across all different stages of their careers? But how do you take a essential but non-sexy topic, right? So classic example is always remediation, right?
Yeah.
Issues of professionalism, remediation, not sexy at all, absolutely essential. Some would consider it like the third rail of residency training, right? How do you take a topic like that and know that you need to cover it, know that it's going to be just like one of those like, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get people in the room. How do you take the proposals that have been submitted on a topic like that and really begin to tease out what you think is going to be able to capture that audience to reach that one person who's out there?
So I think, and this is where if you're gonna propose or submit one of the core content medical educator topics, let's do feedback is a great one. You should probably actually avoid the basics. So if in your proposal you talk about how we will go over the basics of feedback and how to do that at the bedside, I want to hear, this is where you can get wild and crazy. Heck, I don't want to say you want to lie to Cord, but you can kind of create a narrative of we're going to do this crazy, British Bake Off. William brought it up first. Like, come up with a novel way where feedback is given, but it's different than what we're traditionally taught. And if you can present that in a written proposal, that we're going to have 4 educators from 4 different shops come and talk about how they give novel feedback under the following auspice. And so one that I remember that we picked for New Orleans when I was the chair, that was awesome. It was a session where it was 4 people from 4 shops, and they were going to focus on the learner that couldn't. It was going to be the learner who couldn't take feedback. That was the whole auspice of. They focused on a very small part of the feedback pie, and then came up with a session where they were going to get multiple perspectives. And that was easy one for us to pick because it checks the box. We're talking about feedback. We get a wide variety of educators, so that box is checked. And then they're focusing on one particular type of learner that we all have and we all struggle with. And so that got put in the best practices track. It was well attended. The feedback is it was very, very good. And so I think if you can take this broad subject and go find a microcosm, that everybody has a pressure point on. So if I was making one for, say, CCCs, and so it's how do we translate CCCs into corrective action, CCC comments into corrective action plans for the apathetic learner, that covers like 3 different core topics and can be very interesting to get multiple people's take on it. And so I think if you can find those little areas within bigger, broader topics, but narrow it down to something is a one size fits all, because it doesn't matter if you're a big program or a small program. Everybody's got the apathetic learner that CCC doesn't like. Doesn't like is strong, that struggles with, and you want to put them on a corrective action plan. And that hits a big audience with a very, very small niche. So he's got to find those.
No Freudian slips here whatsoever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Final question for you
Okay.
from somebody who has reviewed a lot of didactic proposals in the past. It is oftentimes the perception of somebody out there who's submitting a didactic proposal. Well, I am a no-name nobody from small community shop. Who is ever going to look at my proposal? I'm never going to make it because I'm not XYZ doctor from XYZ institution. Can you speak a little bit to that element of the proposal selection process?
I feel like Molly asked me this question on purpose. because welcome to the party. There's more of us here than you think. Because I am, somebody I was from a doctor's hospital, which is not a big academic place, and I was a junior faculty member when I first got picked. And I think what I would tell them is that your ideas are important. When we look at like the things that are coming forth in EM education and the challenges we have ahead of us, the problems you face at a small community hospital that doesn't have recognition are the majority of our cohort's problems. And so realize that you're not alone. A lot of people have asked or will ask the same question you're going to ask. And really just try to knock it out of the park. Don't use that as an excuse to write a bad proposal. So again, spend your time, make sure you're focusing on the end user, you're focusing on the core community when you write it. You want to make your proposal as clean as you can, well written, make it, very, very, like you're submitting it for a publication, but do not feel that because you're not at, I don't want to say any particular program's name, you're not at the Ivory Tower Emergency Medicine Program, that your proposal will not get picked. Because I can also tell you that, as Molly knows this, is over the last few years, CORD is actually focused to where we are trying to have a wide variety of people, to where, maybe you could look at CORD 10 years ago and say, man, there's 10 programs presenting a CORD. But I know the year I was the chair in New Orleans, and I know last year in Seattle, and I hope and I imagine for Orlando, the goal is to have as many programs represented as possible. And your submission could be the one for your program and be the one for your demographic. So don't feel that just because you're not at a big ivory tower place, you don't have a shot.
We have for several years now put caps actually on the number of didactics that a single individual can do, the number of didactics that a single institution can do, in an effort to create a degree of representation and equitability across the entire spectrum of our education community. And so, yes, it does not matter who you are or where you're from. We want to hear your ideas.
Yeah.
So Andy's off the hot seat. I'll pay you later. Brian, you're up. You ready?
Sure.
All right, we're going to do a little bit of deep therapy here, okay? So harken back to when you first began submitting proposals and getting rejected and rejected and rejected. For the person out there who will be rejected this year, because again, unfortunately, we don't have enough time to include all the ideas that are out there, what would be your advice for them? How did you respond to that personally? What did you do in years to come? Because I don't want anybody to walk away and be like, well, that's it, never trying again.
Well, the first thing is your rejection is anonymous. There is no public shaming. That's like one of the serious, like, you didn't throw yourself out there and get rejected. What you did is you put in a submission, and within a whole pile of a bunch of different things, you weren't accepted in this one time. It's that what we were talking about earlier with Andy saying, like, going to people who presented in that track, go to CORD, look at what everyone else was presenting, find the speaker that you really liked, and connect with them. Like, talk to them afterwards about it, and then reach out after to run your proposal for next year by them. You're not, as I said earlier, you're not alone in this. I'll tell you my first CORD interest one. I sat in a lecture by Christina Shenby, and afterwards I was like, I really want to do something with the talk she just did and turn it into a project. But I was sitting there not knowing what to do or intimidated to go up. And Teresa Chan actually was like, okay, we're going to go up now and talk to her, and turned into a conversation that we then built a project in, that we then later turned into a CORD presentation, because we had already now established that academic aspect of it. So I think it's about kind of just being like, maybe it was a small thing how you filled it out. Maybe it was just within the pile. I haven't been on the side of Molly and Andy on it, but I can tell you they're not looking at the names from the names. They're looking at it from the idea. So how can you improve that idea?
Now, part of the actual proposal acceptance process, less deep therapy here right now. Part of the proposal acceptance process is that when you submit your didactic proposal, if you submit it for one session type, it might get accepted, but under a different session type. So we might decide that your proposal for a curricular change that you wanted to be a track submission with 25 minutes worth of talking time would actually be better suited with a group of different curriculum ideas, and you're being given 10 minutes of talking time. How do you scale down a proposal after it's been accepted and you've put all of this time and effort into crafting this idea of something and now it's changed on you?
So I'll go one further is when this happens and when you receive your acceptance, take a look at what you've been accepted as. Because not only will that change what you start submitting, it will change the number of speakers that you originally had. For your 50-minute presentation that you had proposed, you have 4 speakers. When you have that 10-minute lightning talk, I think what max of 2.
Two.
Is it
Yeah.
one? Yeah, 2.
Mhm.
So if you had this proposal that was 4 people, not only are you adjusting your content, you're adjusting who the speakers are.
Yeah.
So that was something we like this past year, the exact scenario that Molly was saying, we had to figure out. Like we had this, I think it was 30 or 40-minute submission, and we were given a 10-minute talk. And we had accepted it, and then it wasn't for 2 weeks later that one of us was going to email again. We're like, oh, wait, we had 10 minutes. So the first step was figuring out, okay, who is going to be the one talking? Who gets credit for it? Who had other talks accepted and didn't have talks, and finding the right balance and the right timing throughout the day for it. Those different aspects of negotiation that, as I said earlier with your group, really was important to have a good communication. As for how to distill it down, it comes back to what my goals were. How can I communicate my 3 goals or 2 goals for the session in that shorter period of time? So maybe I'm going to cut out a few examples. Maybe I'm going to, kind of brush over one aspect of it quickly and introduce the topic, but not dive as deep in, but still making sure to focus on my 1 or 2 key points.
Yeah, I think there's always the question about retraction, and I think part of it is that again, when you start with the end in mind, is I like to actually do a decent outline as I'm making the objectives and working on the stuff, and then I mean I've had to do this once. I will tell you my key was giving my outline to somebody else and saying, if you had to go to a 10-minute talk on this, what would you care about? And let them do it for me because it's unemotional. It takes because I think that's where the disconnect is that if it's one person giving a talk or 2 people, you're going to be emotionally connected to the stuff you created. And so find somebody who you can say, hey, again, we had this 45-minute talk. It's now a 10-minute talk. Here's the outline. What would you slash? And I think I was surprised by what they slashed, because what I viewed as these really key important parts, they viewed as that would be great if you had more time, but what the people that are going to be there need to know is what I left. And then when I gave the talk, at the end I was like, man, that person was right. And Molly, it was John Casey, so shocker. But it was one of those. It was one of those like, it's good to have somebody that you trust, that you can hand what you were planning on doing with, and then giving them the new auspices of your time constraints and saying, if you had to attend a talk, what would you want to be in it? And they'll be very unemotional and be like, great if you had more time, don't care. Great if you they'll just slash through it, and you're stuck with what was actually a pretty good talk because they took I'm a end user and I don't know about this. What do I have to leave to be inspired to do better at this? So
Yeah, we included our original outline with our speaker handouts so that we were still able to feel like we gave the full content we were going with, but really only highlighted a couple of those points.
So before I give you guys the layup final question, which is what is your one takeaway pearl tip trick for everybody who's going to be listening to this session or is currently on this session, I do want to invite questions from our Cord Connect Hangout right now. If you have specific questions about this process, if you have an issue or a curiosity that we haven't already addressed as part of this conversation, please throw it in the chat. We would be happy to answer your questions instead of just put my friends on the spots questions. So, take pity on my friends and ask your own as well. But if And so I'll kind of be monitoring that over the next couple of minutes. But Brian and Andy, yeah, let's kind of like sum this up. Let's tie a bow on it. So if you had one piece of advice, one tip or trick, one like, phrase of inspiration for everybody out there who's considering submitting a didactic proposal for Cord Academic Assembly, what would it be?
Brian, why don't you go first?
I mean, I've said it over and over again, which is find your group of friends who think similar to you in enough of a way, but more importantly, view things differently, have different backgrounds.
Mhm.
The people that my core group, we are at a variety of different places in different locations, different training environments, different backgrounds of residency training for ourselves. And so we have a diverse perspective, but that we work well together from those environments and that it helps, having those ebbs and flows in your own lives on being able to get that submitted as you're going through. But really like build your team, go to Cord and find your raft of people.
Good reference. Very nice. Dara would be extremely happy. Andy.
Yeah, I'm gonna stick with the idea that to get a little personal. I remember why I fell in love with Cord. I went at the end of my residency. I picked a track. I stayed in a room for a day. I was inspired to be a better educator because of that day. And so when I write a submission and when I work with my faculty write submissions, I try to make sure that we're writing stuff that may inspire somebody. And I know that's a tall ask out of a 10-minute talk, and it's a tall ask out of a submission. But I think if you go with the idea of, is there something about my topic that I can convey that will inspire somebody to be a better educator? You're never going to be wrong with what the outcome is. And I think so. As long as that's your goal, everything else will work out. But if I was to give a practical tip, it would probably be don't submit a bunch of stuff. And I know that's counterproductive, but I think there's a secondary thing when you read a lot of these proposals is, it's gonna how this comes in an Excel spreadsheet. Molly and I know is that it's just the number of proposals and it's the way they were done in time, and so it's proposal 1 through proposal 3,000. But most of us, there's a column that does speaker name, and then I hit that so then I can clump people's proposals together. And you can't be a content expert on 30 things. And that's one of like my little pet peeves when I looked at stuff is that if somebody submitted 30 topics and it's 30 different topics, I kind of think they're just submitting to submit and I lose interest in a lot of their stuff. And so be very focused on what you're submitting. So pick the one topic within a track that you'd like to be a part of and spend a lot of time to write a really, really good proposal for that one or two things, versus saying, you know what, I'm a utility worker faculty member. I can talk about anything, because the truth is you can't. So be focused on what you're going to present and then what you're going to submit, because that will come out in the presentation if it's something you're passionate about and something you're focused on.
I love both of those.
Yeah.
Thank you, William and Michael, so much for the questions in the chat. Michael, I'm going to answer yours by echoing what Andy just said. If there are like hot button topics every single year, right? And yes, AI is kind of like one of the go-to things. I would say that if you are a content expert in that hot button topic, then yeah, write a submission about it, write a proposal about it. If you are not an expert in that hot button topic, well, guess what? Hot button topics are just that, a very small minority of all the potential topics out there. So you don't have to have the latest and greatest as part of your didactic proposal in order for it to be accepted. So if it is your area of expertise, run with it. If it's not your area of expertise, then go with your area of expertise. It doesn't have to necessarily be, like I said earlier, the sexy new topic. Andy, I'm going to throw one of these other questions to you really quick. What are the low-hanging fruit topics for junior faculty who are just getting started but are very passionate?
I think a really cool place to get started, and if you haven't been to this part of Cord, I encourage you to go when it's in Orlando, is the MedTech workshop is to this day, and this isn't just because I came out of the MedTech or the MedTech area, but it's the coolest because it's 20 to 24 small tables with 50 plus educators who are passionate about their pocket projects. And so that's typically where like we talk about innovative education delivery models that can be delivered at a table to a bunch of people. It's where we're looking at sim models, we're looking at like low cost high acuity trainers. That's a really cool room to get your start in. And so if you're going to go back and look at the MedTech track for the MedTech kind of open house. It's always on the last day of chords. If you're going to go back looking through the PDFs, that's where you're going to find it. That's a really cool room to be in just because of the energy that's there. Because again, it's typically well attended from a lot of these smaller programs that don't have large budgets that are looking for cost-effective ways to educate at a high level. So I think that's a great place to start. And so to give you an example, I have been able to successfully have a submission in that track every year for the last 5 years. What we do is we pick a trainer that you can't commercially buy, and we try to build one. And then we do a proposal for that, and then it worked. It's really, really fun. And then Molly, you're okay if I just answer one from the group?
As long as it's not the one on ways to be involved, because I'm going to make Brian answer that one.
Okay, Brian answer that question. I was going to answer it, but let's have Brian answer.
Well, you can both answer it. But
Yeah,
Brian, I was going to say, you self-described, and Andy, I know this applies to you too, at the very beginning, that you wear a lot of hats. So even if you're not standing on stage talking to the audience, what are other ways to get involved at Academic Assembly?
So the way to get involved beyond the hallway is to get on committees. And, the first committee I was on is not actually the one that I ended up spending more of my time with eventually. So I started off with the best practices committee, like the education best practices committee, and I was on there for a few years. And then I was like, I'm doing a ton of advising. So let me start going. And, this was right when we were, COVID happened, and now changes to the application. And so I was like, well, let me get involved in these two committees. And then slowly over time, I've gotten more involved, like with my presentations from stuff I've done on those committees, and getting involved in, getting leadership now within one of them. And just, I think that's where the ways you can get involved. You can get involved with the actual planning of the next year's conference. If Molly had her way, I would already be doing the track chair stuff. But it is a battle between my wife and Molly on my free time.
No. That is now out there permanently on a recording. Absolutely not. Like Shannon wins. Stop that.
But, finding those different ways, it sounds silly and repeating that I keep saying is you're going to find friends in the hallways and, build those connections through there. The like, I think someone just said, like, beyond attending and chatting, it's what William wrote, is just like networking can feel like a burden sometimes, but at Chord it doesn't feel as much of a burden because you are meeting people with similar interests and then building those connections. It would not be on this talk today had Molly and I not befriended in the hallway X number of years ago through one of another mutual friends. And like, that's how you're going to build those connections for future year presentations and future academic opportunities through that networking. Which, Molly, I was going through my desk drawer recently and I found your old Loma Linda business card and pile of business cards.
Nice.
That's very cool.
So I'm gonna answer one more question from the list that was there because Brian did a great job asking how to get involved or answering how to get involved. And I think any themes that I would say are important over the next few years. This is not going to be a talk about the ACGME change from 3 to 4 years. There are other things in those rule changes. I think that there are proposals to be had, specifically looking at procedure increases and looking at other opportunities they're asking us to have, particularly low resource emergency department opportunities. So I think if you go through the new ACGME rules, again, not looking at 3 versus 4, because I feel like that's too, I imagine Chord's going to stay away from those. I'm not on the committee anymore, but there are other things that if your program's already having success at getting people procedure numbers that are higher than with the new changes or in those new experiences they're talking about, this is a great time to present that because they're going to be looking at you can and present it as our program. ACGME is proposing the following change. This talk is going to be a discussion how our program tackles that currently and how this could be applied at other programs. So there are some really easy low-hanging fruit ideas if your program has already solved some of these problems that ACGME wants to solve for EM as a whole that I think are going to be great. And I think played out topics, I think AI had its time. So I think AI's chance was 2025. Maybe it has a little bit of chance in 2026. Because I think now everybody's going to be doing it. It's going to kind of be the so what. But I think wellness, I don't want to say wellness is out because I think wellness, maybe a different discussion about wellness is probably what's next. Not how to be well, but like how do we balance competence with wellness? Maybe that would be a good idea to spin off of wellness. But again, if I was looking for something my first year doing it. I'm in a program that does some unique things. I would go look at the new ACGME requirements and see if there's something that they're asking to be done that we already do, and then have that be my proposal.
Yeah, the number of programs that are going to have to figure out how to do telemedicine or, other things within that list of the new, experiences.
Mhm.
Your program does those at a baseline. Speak about it. Like
Yeah.
their programs are going to need to build that curriculum and someone in that core faculty is going to be like, ooh, let me go do that. Now I will be that expert at my site.
Mhm. Yeah.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you both again for allowing me to volunteer you into this Cord Connects. Thank you to William and Mary, who's in Ireland, lucky her, as well as the Cord Board of Directors for giving us a platform to be able to have this conversation. I know that I speak certainly for myself, but for the entire Academic Assembly Planning Committee when I say that we are super excited and welcome your amazing ideas and unique didactic proposals as part of this application season. Like I started this session by saying, the platform is now officially open as of yesterday. I hear that we have already had a couple of submissions, which is always very, very exciting. It will remain open until August 18th. So you've got a nice big window to be able to find your people, have a second pair of eyes, take a look at your proposal, really dedicate some time into coming up with your ideas. And then we're hoping to be able to put together a program that not only is representative of the entire diverse nature of our specialty, but the diverse nature of our entire educator group as we continue to grow and change and adapt to the ever-changing world of medical education. So thank you all for being here today. If anybody ever has any questions, you can always reach out to me or any other person on the planning committee. I will put my email into the chat now for everyone who's here and for everyone who watches afterwards. So thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you all so much. Have a great Thursday.